Hello, everybody, and welcome to World Talks, where every word matters here on TVP World. My name's Don Arleth. Top jobs in the European Union are still not set in stone. Just yesterday, after a meeting in Brussels, the top parties couldn't make an agreement on whether Ursula von der Leyen will go ahead to serve on another term as European Commission President. Now joining me to discuss the holdup and who's to fill the EU's top positions is Oana Popescu-Zamfir, Director of Global Focus Center. Hello, and thank you very much for joining us today on TVP World.
Hi, thank you for the invitation. Hello from Brussels.
Yes, and it's Brussels we're talking about. So Donald Tusk here, seen to be the most well-positioned, powerful European leader at the moment. His party has 21 members, the most in the European People's Party, and in Parliament for that matter. Now, what can he do with this big advantage that he has currently at the moment?
Look, I think, I'm not surprised that the top jobs have not been distributed yet
Already.
and today. I mean, this is always a lengthy negotiation, and it's a very complex negotiation. So, frankly speaking, Donald Tusk has a competitor also in Kaja Kallas, who also wants one of the top jobs and is one of the potential contenders for High Representative for Foreign Policy and Security. I think perhaps the disadvantage that both Poland and the Baltics have is that they are seen as very firmly representing one side of the spectrum of EU member states, and it's the side that makes security the top priority and tends to center everything around the geopolitical imperative, which is in no way mistaken given the context on our borders with the war in Ukraine. It's just that not all the EU member states want to see such a potentially polarizing position from one of the EU leaders, and I think they're looking for people who can balance the multiple perspectives in the 27-member bloc. I think it's a function of are we going to have that balance by contrasting positions that go to the influential member states such as Ursula von der Leyen from Germany, continuing as president of the European Commission, and then somebody from a powerful Eastern European country like Poland to represent somehow the interests of Central Eastern Europe. Or are we going to go for people who themselves are more able to be, say, more neutral brokers, and then who will try to mediate and be negotiators? I think this is going to come out of discussions over the next weeks, and they have been going on for many weeks now. So really, anything can happen.
Right, you see this within NATO as well, right? It's looked at, everyone's looking at Mark Rutte to take over that job instead of somebody from this region of Europe, well, probably due to the geopolitical tensions that we're currently seeing. So the same still holds true with Kaja Kallas, because it seems like Poland would definitely be supportive of her role as chief of EU diplomacy. But then again, that position could be up for grabs. Do you think that that's still kind of a bone of contention in these negotiations?
It is, and I clearly think it is. If there is any one position that seems to already have somebody occupying that post is Ursula von der Leyen. I think she has very clear chances of being the top runner, so probably faces much less competition than we have in the other jobs. Also, because you mentioned the competition for NATO Secretary General, Mark Rutte has overwhelming support. Not that cannot turn in the coming days and weeks. But still, it seems that we already have two people lined up for the very top jobs in the EU and NATO. in theory, there is no connection between these two organizations, so negotiations are carried out separately. In practice, we all know that's not necessarily the case, because and then it's very much about keeping a balance among all the member states. So with the Netherlands and Germany comfortably set in their top positions, I think that the one thing is clear: Central Eastern Europe will have to be represented at a much higher level than it was previously. It's not just the geopolitical context that imposes it. It's also the fact that Central Eastern Europe has not had the same level of representation and that older member states have had. So we might see not just one, but perhaps multiple Central Eastern Europeans occupying significant jobs, because it's not just about the high-profile ones. It's also about the director generals of the EU. It's very much about what happens in the defense realm. Who's going to be commissioner for defense? The College of Commissioners is also something that's going to be very hotly debated. So that's why I'm saying that things are very hardly predictable, because all of these things are negotiations where countries are willing to trade some positions for others. They're willing to accept different ways of advancing their interests. So it's really not just a very straightforward game. And then, like I said, Kaja Kallas is there. We have Romanian President Klaus Iohannis, who's been vying for the top NATO job, clearly not with the hope of getting it, but probably to position himself better within the EU negotiations context, and to sort of profile Romania as a more balanced and Central Eastern European country that's more able to broker agreement among the member states than Poland and the Baltics are, that have more a stauncher stance on security. So see, this is really the fun that happens every time that we have European elections and the reshuffle in European institutions.
Right. Well, Antonio Costa still, it seems like he's the reason behind yesterday's breakup or indecision, if you will. Taking his role and splitting it into two terms, why would that be such a problem for his party?
For his party? Mm-hmm. The socialists, do you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, and again, let's not forget that this is not just about keeping the balance among the member states. It's also about political representation. And while the EPP has been the clear winner of this year's elections, and to nobody's surprise, well, it will need the socialists in order to maintain a comfortable majority, with given the high number of conservatives and radicals that we have elected to the European Parliament. So then the socialists, I think, see themselves as being quite well placed to negotiate from a position of advantage with the EPP, and then they're not going to give up easily on the top jobs that they are eyeing, and Antonio Costa is one of the good competitors for the high profile, the high visibility position. So I would guess, it's just a guess, that's one of the reasons behind the holdup.
Italian press, La Repubblica, is reporting Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk as a weaver in the agreement on new EU parliamentary majority and in the lineup for top EU posts. Yet it also says that Donald Tusk is planning to leave the Italian Prime Minister behind the door. Do you think that this is a growing possibility? And I believe there are fears of Meloni and her sympathy for the former ruling party here in Poland, Law and Justice. So is that enough? Do you think that that's indeed going to happen with Mr. Tusk? And does he have good enough reason to leave her completely out of the process?
Look, I mean, we can only speculate here, but I think Maloney is going to be one of the high-profile, let's say, kingmakers in what concerns the both the kind of the makeup and the role of the European Parliament, and in all the negotiations around the EU top jobs. There's quite a lot of sympathy for Maloney coming from various places, and sometimes precisely from the moderate parties that did not regard her ascent favorably. But now that on foreign policy and security, she's been treading a pretty disciplined EU line, and internally, she seems to favor a more moderate. A more moderate take than Viktor Orban. A lot of voices are saying, well, Maloney has tempered and toned down her divisive rhetoric, and she doesn't really want to explode the European Union as Viktor Orban potentially is trying to do, or at least is succeeding in doing through his actions. So she's someone who's a more tame radical, someone that we can embrace, and Italy is one of the very influential EU member states, so a lot of the other leaders want to work with her, but that is also a very slippery slope, because a lot of what Maloney represents is actually just the mainstreaming of radicalism, which is what we're seeing these days. We're seeing radical forces become such a significant political influence in the EU, and that means both in Brussels and in the member states, that you need to work with them, and you need to kind of make them part of the democratic consensus building. But that is a very difficult endeavor when all of their discourse is actually aimed at sort of throwing many of our founding values out the window. So then, like I said, there's a lot of temptation to work with Maloney, and there's a significant danger in that, because we might see so much of the radical discourse actually embraced by the moderate parties. So in this context, I think it would make sense for Donald Tusk, who is a representative of the clearly pro-democratic, pro-European discourse, and somebody who wants to preserve the founding values of the EU, to try and sideline Maloney, not just as a political competition between two competitors, but also in terms of what she represents. So again, we can only speculate there, but there's definitely a competition going on between the more progressive line and the more accommodationist line that says, well, we can embrace some parts of the radical discourse in Europe, and try to see if we cannot moderate it in so doing.
Right. Well, we still have, looks like a few days, couple weeks to go before the end of the month, next meeting, and we'll see if we don't fill some of these top jobs in the European Union. Oana, Popescu-Zamfir, Director of Global Focus Center, thank you very much for joining me today and sharing your thoughts. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that concludes this edition of World Talks. Thanks for joining us, and stay with us for more here on TVP World.